This place is crazy. Let's head to the lower decks. You know, where they store all the luggage. Perfect. A place to hide. I bet my dad won't even notice I'm gone. I began creeping through the dim-lit hallways, my heart beating loudly in my chest. The corridors seemed endless, twisting and turning without any apparent logic. I tried to keep quiet, but my footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness. Where am I? I whispered to myself. Just then, I heard it, the scraping of metal on wood, slow and deliberate. It sounded like someone dragging something heavy nearby. Was I imagining it, or was someone actually down here? Curiosity battled fear within me. Should I turn back or investigate? The sound of footsteps grew louder and more distinct. Panic started to rise within me. I pressed myself against the cool wall, staying perfectly still. The footsteps stopped right outside the door I had just come through. What was on the other side of that door? I wondered. Whoever was out there had stopped. I strained my ears to listen. A low voice broke the silence. I wish this stupid ship would stop creaking. It's driving me insane. Another voice, deeper and colder than the first, replied, almost done, Smith. Just need to finish securing the cargo hold. We've got to run. The voices faded away, leaving me in the suffocating darkness. Now I was scared. What cargo hold? Who was talking about running? And why did they want to escape? I stood there, frozen, unsure what to do. Then slowly, very slowly, I made my way back towards my cabin. With each step, my anxiety increased. I was sure I was being I could hear my own breathing and my pulse thumping in my ears. Just as I thought I would make it, I heard them. Footsteps running in my direction. Oh, God, I froze. Two figures appeared around the corner, their faces half hidden in the shadows. Smith, grab that light, one of them said, his voice tight with urgency. The other figure nodded and flicked on a bright flashlight, its beams slicing through the darkness. The two men were dressed in dark, nondescript clothes, their expressions grim. Their eyes, though, were filled with a wild intensity that sent chills down my spine. They were edging closer and I could see the harsh lines on their faces, the glint of teeth when they hide. I breathed, scrambling behind a nearby storage container. My heart pounded against my ribs as I held my breath, hoping they wouldn't spot me. Time seemed to stretch on forever. Finally, the coast was clear and I let out a shaky breath. Where am I gonna go? I thought, dashing down another hallway. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind me once again. Oh God, they found me. I picked up my pace, adrenaline surging through my veins. I ran blindly, desperate to put as much distance between me and my pursuers as possible. I had no idea where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. The hallway seemed to go on endlessly. The floor tilted, and I realized I had turned onto a ramp leading downwards. I didn't want to go down there. It was too dark, too creepy, but there was no other way. Suddenly, a figure materialized in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt. It was one of the men who had been chasing me, his face inches away from mine. Found you, he growled, his breath hot and foul on my skin. Terror choked me, stealing my voice. My legs trembled, threatening to give way. I wanted to scream, to claw, to bite, but I couldn't. I was trapped in a prison of my own fear. He reached out, his hand like a vice, closing in on me. Then, right when I thought it was over, the emergency lights flashed red, bathing the hallway in an eerie glow. A loud voice boomed over the intercom. Emergency lockdown. Repeat, emergency lockdown. People started running, screaming. It was pure chaos. The man's grip on me loosened, his attention diverted by the pandemonium around us. In that split second, I raced down the darkened hallway, desperately searching for an escape. The image of the terrified passengers, the piercing alarm, the dead man's cold eyes burned into my memory. I continued running, not daring to look back. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from that terrifying place. When I finally stopped, my lungs burning and my legs shaking, I realized I was in the ship's medical bay. Empty beds surrounded me, the stark white sheets, and the smell of antiseptic offering little comfort. Panting, my gaze fell on a mirror on the wall. I looked back at myself, my face ashen, my eyes wide with terror. The events of the night spun through my mind. The cryptic conversations, the chase, the dead man's touch. All of it felt like a horrifying dream. But the pounding of my heart and the tremor in my hands were a painful reminder that it was real. Where my parents? I thought frantically. Had they noticed I was missing? Would they be searching for me? I hesitated for a moment, torn between the desire to go back to the safety of my cabin and the fear of facing whatever lurked in the ship's shadowy hallways. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching, My blood ran cold. Was it the man with the piercing eyes? Slowly, cautiously, I peeked out of the medical bay. To my relief, it was just a nurse, her face etched with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft. Her eyes, though, were sharp and knowing. I lost my parents," I stammered, tears welling up in my eyes. She didn't reply. Instead, she gently placed a hand on my shoulder and led me out of the medical bay. Outside, the ship was in chaos. Passengers and crew members ran frantically through the hallways, their faces etched with fear and confusion. Some were sobbing, others yelling into their phones. I felt a surge of panic. I had to find my parents. I pulled away from the nurse, pushing through the crowd. "Mom, Dad, where are you?" I called out, my voice echoing through the ship. No answer. Only the murmur of worried voices and the distant crackle of the intercom filled the air. The nurse, sensing my distress, reached out and grabbed my arm. "Let me help you," she said, her voice calm amidst the chaos. "Why are we doing this?" I asked, looking up at her. "Why is the ship like this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she led me through a maze of hallways, until we reached a door marked crew only. She pushed it open and gestured for me to enter. Inside, I found myself in a dimly lit room filled with people. All of them looked at me, their eyes filled with a strange mixture of fear and determination. I was confused, scared, but something in their gazes made me even more afraid. Was I really safe here? Was there somewhere else I should be going? The tall man stepped forward, his face grave. "We need to leave this ship," he said, his voice low. "Now, what?" I asked, fear constricting my throat. "Where are we going?" Without answering, the man pulled me toward the door. He led me onto a dark and narrow passageway. It was cramped, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. The air was thick with the smell of salt and something else, something metallic and sharp, like blood. The man motioned for me to stay quiet. Then he put his ear against the door at the end of the passageway. He listened intently. After a moment, he straightened up and nodded. "It's clear," he whispered. He pushed the door open and gestured for me to go through first. On the other side, I found myself in a small, cluttered room. There was a ladder leaning against a porthole, a rope card, and a life jacket hung on a hook. It was obvious what we were planning to do. Escape, but how? The man joined me, his face grim. "There's only one way out," he said, pointing to the porthole. "But isn't that dangerous?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's our only option," he replied. "Trust me." But a sudden noise made me look up. It was a knock, a firm knock on my cabin door. I paused my book and listened intently. Was someone out there trying to get in? My heart started to race. I checked the door again, making sure it was firmly closed and locked. The knocking came again, louder this time. It sounded like someone was trying to break down the door. Panic started to rise within me. I pressed myself against the door, bracing for whatever was about to happen. There were more knocks, and then a voice. "Open up, it's me, Robert." The name hit me like a bucket of cold water. It was that boy I had met earlier, the one who had invited himself to my cabin and made me feel uneasy. Now he was outside my door asking to get in. But how did he know where I lived? My thoughts were jumbled as I tried to figure out what to do. I knew I shouldn't open the door, but the knocking continued, and each knock brought a new surge of fear. "Please let me in." Robert's voice was pleading now, desperate. I remember standing there frozen, unsure of what to do. The knocking stopped and I heard him walk away. Then he was back again, his voice closer now. "I promise I won't hurt you." My fear was mounting. What did he want? Why was he outside my room in the middle of the night? I could hear his breathing now, shallow and quick. "I'm scared," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I knew I should call for help, but my phone was charging in the other room. I was trapped. The fear was almost physical, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then I heard a click. The doorknob was turning. I screamed, a primal sound that echoed through the ship. But the door didn't open. Instead, I heard a muffled curse. Robert was gone. I didn't know where he went, but I was sure he was out there somewhere. The clock ticked loudly, each tick echoing my heartbeat. Eventually, the coast seemed clear, and I moved. Slowly, I unlocked the door and stepped out into the hallway. I called out for help, my voice shaking, but there was no answer. I was alone. I hurried to my room, locking myself inside, the door between me and whatever was out there. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Sleep was impossible. Each creak of the ship, every soft noise sent me into a panic. I called my family, but their phone went straight to voicemail. I was alone and scared, and when the morning finally came, I realized I wasn't alone. After all, My nightmare had become a reality. The ship had arrived at its next port, and I was no longer on that lonely, terrifying deck, say. But the memory of that night, the terror and the mystery of it, that has stayed with me. This happened to me on a cruise ship. It was late at night and I couldn't sleep. First, some background information. I was on a week-long cruise with my mum and dad on a large cruise ship. Our cabin was located on deck 7 near the front of the ship. We had just come back from a port, and after getting ready for bed, I started reading a book. But after a while, I got bored of the book and decided to go to sleep. So I turned off the light, closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. I don't know why. It was so annoying because my parents were sleeping soundly, so I got out of bed and went onto the balcony. I sat on the little chairs and laid on the little table. It was a beautiful starry night and the ocean breeze was nice, but it still wasn't helping me relax. After a bit, I gave up and went back inside. I turned on the TV, but it was just too boring, and after a while, I turned off the lights and got back into bed. I don't know how long I had been asleep when it happened, but I suddenly woke up. The room was dark, but the dim glow from the hallway light seeped in through the edges of the door. Everything was quiet, and for a moment I thought maybe I had just woken up for no reason. Then I heard it, a soft knock on my door. It was so faint that I wasn't even sure I had heard it at first. I sat up in bed listening carefully. The knock came again, gentle but clear. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Who would be knocking on my door at this hour? I glanced at the clock on the small table next to my bed. It was 3 a.m. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly got out of bed and walked to the door. My hand hovered over the doorknob as I peered through the peephole, expecting to see someone outside. But there was no one. The hallway was empty, silent, except for the distant creaking of the ship. My heart began to race as I opened the door slightly. I looked both ways down the hall, but no one was there. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling uneasy. Maybe it was just a prank. I thought maybe someone had knocked on the wrong door by mistake. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to bed, trying to shake off the strange feeling that something wasn't right. But sleep didn't come easily. I lay there in the darkness, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the soft creaks and groans of the ship. My mind kept drifting back to the knock. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then something else happened. I was lying on my side facing the wall when I felt like someone was watching me. It was an odd feeling one I couldn't explain. My body froze and I slowly turned my head to look around the room. That's when I saw him. There, standing in the corner of my room, was a man, or at least it looked like a man. He was tall and shadowy, his features hard to make out in the dim light, but I could see his eyes. They were dark and hollow, and they were staring directly at me. He didn't move, didn't say a word, he just stood there watching me. My heart pounded in my chest and I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I couldn't take my eyes off him, frozen in terror. It was like my body refused to move. Finally, I gathered enough courage to leap out of bed. I didn't care about anything else. I had to get out of that room. I bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock before pulling it open and running out into the hallway. I didn't stop running until I reached the lobby where a few of the crew staff were still awake. I was shaking, gasping for breath, and when I told them what had happened, they immediately sent security to check my room. I followed them back, staying a few steps behind, my heart still racing. When they opened the door, the room was empty. There was no one there. The man, the shadowy figure I had seen, was gone. The security team tried to assure me that it was probably just a dream, or maybe I had imagined it, but I knew what I had seen. I knew that man was real, or at least he had been. Later that day, one of the workers on the ship approached me. He seemed hesitant at first, like he wasn't sure if he should tell me what he knew. But eventually, he spoke. He told me that the room I was staying in had a history. Years ago, a man named Hendrik had died in that very room. The details of his death were unclear, but ever since then, strange things had been reported by guests who stayed in the room. Some heard knocking, others saw shadows, and a few like me had seen the man himself. As he spoke, a chill ran down my spine. It was the same room, the same corner where I had seen that figure standing. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. So I asked to be moved to a different cabin. For the rest of the trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. When I finally reached my family's island, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But even now, whenever I think back to that night, the memory of those hollow eyes staring at me in the darkness still sends chills through my body. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more scary cruise stories, then click this video on the screen now. Also, make sure you subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.